You know, I despise talking about politics, but they always seem to come up in conversations. I uh, I also despise talking about problems in the world or the negativity in other people, yet they always seem to come up in conversations. And I despise looking at things through a lens of negativity, if you will. I hate using that term, but for lack of a better term, the idea that our future is grim as a species. Now, I've been thinking about this most of my life. When I was younger, I was kind of an apocalypse fan. I was waiting for the shit to hit the fan. I wanted the end times to come. And I always knew that a lot of people would probably suffer. But in my mind, my thought wasn't that I wanted people to suffer or I wanted humans to die. It was more of a realization that if we continue along the path that we're going as a species, it's going to be much worse in the end when the shit finally does hit the fan. Our population has doubled since I was born. Now, the world just cannot sustain many more people. And I won't get into the details, the semantics about what a society is, or the science of how large a species needs to be, or whether we've gone past the point of no return, destroying our planet. None of that really matters in the big picture. It matters, but it's nothing that an individual can really process. There's a lot going on out there. Just put it that way. Now, this isn't really about disastrous futures, but more along the lines of how do we know what's important to talk about? A person could go screaming their whole life about climate change, and whether they're heard or not, remains to be determined by the people who are actually listening. But more than that, are we able to do anything about it? Now, I'm really not in the argument for the climate change. I'm just using that as an example. I have mixed feelings about where we're at with that. But there are so many things that are out of our control, and then so many things that we think might be within our control. I thought that, for example, with the internet, I really thought it could go one of two ways. I remember in the 90s, probably 1998, when I finally had an internet connection, waited for that dial-up modem to load so I could get on Napster and download a couple free songs. It was awesome. And I remember sitting back thinking I had a band with my brother. We played a punk band back then, and we had a MySpace page for our band, First in Line. And I remember when Facebook became popular and started outweighing the MySpace and how people went to Facebook. And at that time, I thought, there's two ways that this is going to go. Either it's going to be a future of sharing information, of people exchanging free, I guess relying on maybe crowdfunding, a million different ways that could go as far as getting paid, but that it would be either a free internet where we could share information, or it would be utterly controlled by a small group within the population. And of course the latter happened. And it's pretty pathetic. It's sad, but even the large companies, of course, we have Google, who dominates the internet and listens in on everything that happens. But Facebook, I was thinking about this earlier, so many people use Facebook. And I read an article that said 25% of people admit to getting their only news sources from Facebook. I wasn't surprised, but kind of disgusted by the fact that so many people actually think that they're going to get legitimate news from a social media site like that. There's a little fly flying around here, a little tiny fruit fly. So I was thinking about this. Facebook has been shown to be an irresponsible company. They have been selling our information. I mean, the Cambridge Analytica scandal, the whole thing. It's well known that your information is being harvested like a commodity and sold to the highest bidder. And there's nothing we can do about this at this point. We're basically stuck into it. When Facebook announced last year that they wanted to release their own cryptocurrency, which is going to be Libra, and they want to dominate basically the financial market, and a lot of people cheer and love blockchain technology. They love the idea of different forms of currency because they don't trust their own governments, which is understandable. But do you really want Facebook in charge of your ability to transact between people, to to buy things? You know, what happens when you post something Facebook doesn't like and they delete your account and make it impossible for you to use Libra currency? These are all just little aspects of a future that we're heading into. And I know it goes from climate change to something like, you know, Facebook, Libra. All of these are little components in this condition that we have called consciousness. And I call it a condition because it seems to not be serving us very well. We've lost track of who we are. We've lost touch with who we want to be. We are trying to reconcile our desire to live the old ways with our the reality that we are seeking creatures that are always looking for something new. We're novelty seeking creatures. And because of our ability to do pretty much anything we want now, you know, and we're not held back by not being able to travel or not having the means to feed ourselves, most of us, it's kind of made us a little bit psychotic as a species. We have all this time on our hands now and all these ideas, and nobody seems to really even know where we're going. We can't even seem to agree on what society wants to accomplish. All of these, you know, new discoveries and breakthroughs, we celebrate these things. Wow, it's an amazing new technology. Wow, this is great. Look, I'm going to put Alexa in my home so, you know, I can even share more of my information with the world. And people are willingly going Orwellian. You know, if you haven't read 1984, I hate to beat a dead horse here. It's something that is constantly coming up, this Orwellian society idea. And I don't like using the metaphors, but yeah, I read it a couple decades ago, and the book pretty much lays it out. I mean, that's, except for in the book, the state had put listening devices and cameras into the televisions and the radios. We just decided to do it on our own. So we're willing to sacrifice our privacy for convenience. And that tells me something about the human race. If we're willing to sacrifice our own privacy and our own values sometimes for the convenience of having something, and when I say values, I mean those who are, say, let's say those who are making an extra couple million off of a trade deal that they make, maybe an insider trading or something, and they know that people will be harmed by this. You know, they know that if one person's gaining billions in stock revenue, somebody else is losing their ass. That's just the way it usually works. Without getting into the financial aspect, and believe me, I understand finances are complicated, but it's pretty obvious when over the past couple decades, that it used to be the 10% in this country, and then it went to the 1%, and now most of the money is with the 0.01%. You know, it's the 1/100th of a percent, and the wealth keeps getting consolidated into smaller and smaller circles. And yet the people continue to, to go along supporting these officials by saying, yeah, well, they're going to improve the life for us, and they're going to improve our economy, and oh, look how well we're doing in America. And it's all just bullshit. You know, it's all hiding under a blanket of really, instead of what could be, we're looking at, well, you should be happy you have anything at all. And the reality is that we could all be doing a lot better. We all owe ourselves more, and we deserve more. And so as a human being on this planet, not a white male, not even a male, not even an American, but just a human being who looks other human beings in the eyes and understands that humanity. I can't understand why we can divide ourselves among such mundane lines as, well, this is a line I drew. Look, in the borders, I understand. That's not what I'm saying. I'm saying, of course, we have to protect our nations. Then we protect our states. We protect our communities. We protect our own homes. We put fences around our homes. I mean, of course we want to protect ourselves. But the issue is dehumanizing each other in order to justify our actions against one another. And the fact that there's continuous bombing and wars in the Middle East that aren't even talked about, that aren't even covered, civilians dying each day who are, hiding in their homes, hoping not to be bombed by forces that don't even have anything to do with their country. whether it's the U.S. and Russia fighting proxy wars in Syria or elsewhere, or Korea, or Vietnam, we just sit back and just kind of say, oh yeah, well, we want a better American life, you know? And it's not just Americans, though. It's everyone. I guess what I'm saying is we all need to wake our asses up and realize that things aren't just going to fall into place for us. That we all have to speak our minds on things and be aware of what's going on, but we can't obsess to the point where, you know, about things that we can't change. It's like the old serenity prayer in the AA. They say, God grant me the serenity, or what, the wisdom, what is it, the serenity to accept the things I cannot change, the courage to change the things I can, and the wisdom to know the difference. And that, I'm not a religious person, but I always found that basically that premise is found in many different belief systems through the world. It all comes down to what I call the impact that you can have on something is dependent on whether or not you have any influence over it. And so we have a circle of concern and a circle of influence. The circle of concern are things that bother you, but you can't do shit about. Circle of influence are things that you actually can do things about. And when people are ranting and complaining on Twitter or online on Facebook or posting all their political beliefs, and then they go to work and they're afraid to speak up, or they're out with a group of friends and somebody says something racist and they're afraid to speak up, you know, because when you're there in person, it's a lot harder for people to actually speak up and be the one person in the room who's the black sheep who says, no, this is bullshit. But we have to be those people, because you might find you're not the only black sheep. There are a lot more people who think that way. It doesn't mean we're all right or wrong, and it's not about dividing the people among these morals or values, because these things, it's the fluid dynamics of humankind, if you will. We're constantly morphing our idea of what values are, but we do have some very basic ones, you know, treat others as you would want to be treated. So that's my ramble for the day, for now. And thanks for listening. Let me know what you all think. I mean, is the future as grim as it may seem? I don't know. You know, it's all perspective. Maybe there's a utopia ahead and we can pull our heads out of our asses. Or maybe at least pull our heads out of the sand, because too many people are ignoring what's going on. But at the same time, there's a huge segment of the population who is going overly obsessive about every little thing that's wrong with the world. I guess I can give you an example, like, you know, PETA, for example, you know, the environmental terrorism, like, okay, look, you guys kill tens of thousands of animals because you say it's better that they die than they live with owners. I mean, these people are completely ass backwards, but they continue and they exist, and there are people who support them. So there are a lot of groups out there who think they're doing the right thing, but they're just really wasting time, wasting everyone's time. Those are some of my thoughts. Talk to y'all soon. Thanks for listening.